Satoru is finally preventing Kaio's kidnapping, but did he change it for the better? We picked up from last week's episode where Satoru makes eye contact with his villain, but at that moment decides to quickly go back in time and one last time fix the situation permanently. He goes back to the day of the science museum and once again spends the day with Kaio. There are little subtle differences going on, but nothing too dramatic. The one noticeable change of note that his friend Kenya confronts Satoru about his recent personality change, basically that he's just noticed that he's changed, and he's able to play it off, but Kenya wants to end up helping him trying to save Hinazuki because he tells him he knows about the abuse that has been going on, but essentially hasn't had the guts to really do anything about it. So they come up with a plan to falsely kidnap her in order to protect her from during that day that she goes missing. Satoru even goes out of his way to make sure that Yuki, his friend, has an alibi from the police by throwing rocks at his home. He then follows Hinazuki's mother but is stopped by Kenya before he can really do anything. When the day comes of Kaio's disappearance, nothing really happens. There's no phone call from her mother, or even a teacher doesn't really make much of it. But Satoru and his friends get involved in the kidnapping as they want to wait for time to pass so they can get the attention of the police. Things are starting to look up a bit until the last moment in this episode where a mysterious person is walking into Kaio's hiding place and she wakes up and notices, leaving the episode on a cliffhanger until next week. I like this episode, but I do have to acknowledge that there were a ton of dumb stuff that happened in this episode. I don't know if it was on purpose on Satoru's part, because it was like he was making irrational decisions without really thinking them through all the way. He hides Kaio in a safe place for one night, but leaves her alone for a good chunk of the time. It is explained that he has to sneak out so no one can really suspect anything, but why couldn't he have just included his mom in some capacity in the first place, just letting her know that he would be with her? Also, they could have made it more obvious that there's something suspicious about this teacher, even to go as far as to give visual cues that something is off about him. Do I think he's a person at the end of the episode? No, I have a feeling that will be Kaio's mother, unless it's the killer. Then it would probably be the teacher. Also, wasn't there a moment in episode 2 where it shows Kenya and the teacher talking secretly? That would have to explain why he was so interested in helping Satoru in this episode in the first place. But I do like this timeline much more than the future one, and I hope we can stay here for as long as we can until everything is fixed in the future. So those are my thoughts on this week's episode. Do you think that one of these people that are very close to Satoru are the killers? And we will have to see in next week's episode. But until then, we'll have to see what happens in next week's episode. So thanks for watching and see you next week.